Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. And in this video, we're going to be talking about some very simple basic SRE concepts, right? These concepts are pretty important when you're developing a service and trying to own it across various boundaries. So, whenever you're working for big organizations, you realize that there are a bunch of services across the board, right? And those services are pretty important in terms of the people that maintain them because there are other people that depend on these services. So we all need to talk the same language, right? And when we're trying to talk the same language, it's very important to define a certain set of concepts. And in this video, we're going to be talking about service level indicators, service level objectives, and service level agreements. Now, you'd ask me, what the heck are you even talking about? Why do I need to know these things? And is it just jargon? And how effective is it in the age of AI? So let's dive into it and see what it really means to be able to understand these concepts. And I'm not going to make the video too long, but we'll pay attention to the most important things. And, I'll give you a definition of what it means. And then I'll try and explain to you on the ground level what it means to be able to understand these concepts. So I just won't I just won't throw the terms out, but I'll give a genuine attempt at explaining why it is the way it is and why are they just not terms and they actually mean something. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is your service level indicators. So service level indicators. Okay. So let's start off pretty simply. So say you have a service, right? And this is a cat service, for instance. And what it does is it serves you images of cats. So let's say you have something like this, a cat service, and this cat service will display images. So let's say, so this is a cat service, right? And what this does is it serves images of cats, right? So serves images of cats, okay, right? And now your team is responsible for maintaining this particular service at your company, right? And everyone's like, okay, this is the cat service. You have it serving images. It is hosted on your on-premise servers, or it's hosted on. It can be hosted even on a cloud. So it doesn't really matter. So let's just say for now it's just hosted on your servers. So you have this, and you have the cat service. Okay, so far so good. Now it's, let's say you have another team at the company that depends on this cat service for images, right? And they would come to me and say, hey Sladen, how do I know your service is reliable, or how do I know that this service that you say is, serving me images of cats, how do I know that it's going to be up whenever I need it? So I'll be like, okay, yeah, that's fair. And I would say, okay, what kind of things are you expecting from this service? So the person would say, okay, I expect that this serves at least all of the images that I want in less than, say, 100 milliseconds. And I'd be like, okay, that's a fair enough ask. They would say, okay, I need to be able to download these images in less than 50 milliseconds. And I'd be like, okay, that does, both of these demands that you've made make sense. And if you're starting to look closely, you'll realize, okay, that there are certain properties of this service that I need to be able to promise to the people that depend on this service, right? Another person could come in and say, okay, hey Sladen, I demand that the error rate that this service has is less than 10% because I'm serving user traffic. I need the errors to be less than 10%. And I'm like, okay. So if you're looking closely at the system, you kind of start to realize that, hey, there are certain aspects of this system, excuse me, there are certain aspects of this system that I need to serve across the board. This is what you would define as, in formal terms, as indicators. So let's just define them here and call these indicators. And you would say, okay, what are these indicators that I'm trying to serve? Let me just make this better. So here it is. Okay. So what are these indicators from this discussion that we've just had? The first indicator that comes to mind is latency. So you would say latency is something that I really care about in this system because people want their latency to be, 100 milliseconds. The second thing that has come across in the discussion is download speed. So people have said that the download speed needs to be a certain amount. And I'm like, okay, I'll pay attention to that. The third indicator that people have said that is really important from this point of view is your error rate. So people have started to say that the error rate needs to be a certain amount. Now, if you kind of look at the indicators, you would say, okay, these are the indicators that I need to really pay attention to in my system. Okay, all good so far. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone's like, yeah, I think we can start to pay attention to these indicators and let's start measuring them. So what you do on this part is you set up your monitoring and you set up your stack to be able to measure these indicators. So you measure these indicators and you store them in a database, right? Because why do you store them in a database? The reason you store them in the database is because you need to be able to ensure that the indicators that you've said you're going to provide are actually being provided. So far you've set up your monitoring, you've set up your database, and you've set up these indicators, right? So far you're with me? Good. Now, after you set up these indicators, what you would realize quickly is you go to the team and you say, hey, I've set up these indicators. But they'd be like, wait a minute, you said you've set up these indicators, but where are the limits for these indicators? Where are the thresholds? Where am I going to see how all of this is defined? And you'll be like, yeah, that is a very fair point. So what you do in that case is define something called as service level objectives, or SLOs in general, right? This part is very important because these are the objectives. These are the ones that state, hey, you know, I have certain thresholds that I've defined for this particular service and I want them to meet it. So this part is important because you would need to understand that the service level indicators are just numbers. So the level indicators, or SLIs, are just numbers. They mean things, but they don't show you the whole picture. When you take these service level indicators that I've said here and you put on them constraints, and you say, hey, I'm going to put the constraints on these SLIs, and I'm going to say, this part of I'm going to say this particular service level indicator has a certain threshold. So I'm going to say that I'm going to start putting numbers, and I'm going to go to the team and I'm going to say, okay, for your latency, I'm going to give you 100 milliseconds. For your download speed, I'm going to give you 50 milliseconds. And for your error rate, I'm going to give you 2%. I'm going to say my service, as long as I'm maintaining the service, these are the guarantees that I'm going to give you. I'm going to say, as long as I'm maintaining the service, these are the guarantees I'm going to give you. This is the objectives that I'm going to define. That's why they're called objectives. When you start putting numbers on your service, you call them objectives. So this is the this is called SLO. So whenever you're dealing with a service, you have a set of indicators that we talked about. And when you put your numbers or you put your constraints on them, they become service level objectives. Okay, so now you've had your service level indicators. We know that we are tracking latency, we are tracking error rate, and we are tracking download speed, right? And we've defined our thresholds for these particular services here, right? So far, so good. Now, after this part comes the most important part, right? Now, whenever you define this, and this is not part of an engineering team, but I'll still explain it. It's called service level agreements, your SLA. So we studied SLI, SLO, SLA. So a service level agreement is basically if you don't meet these particular SLI or SLOs, sorry, not SLI actually, if you don't meet your SLO, you have certain set of repercussions, right? Don't meet your SLOs, you have certain set of repercussions. These repercussions are called service level agreements. So if your service is, say, your latency is greater than 100 milliseconds for like greater than 4 hours, you pay a penalty of $100 an hour. Okay. Or you pay a penalty of $200 an hour. Right now, this particular set of numbers is generally not decided by the engineers. This is generally decided by either the PMs, or you have your technical leads, or you have your management team that decides these. So generally engineers are not involved in this particular process. But a service level indicator, service level objectives, that's where the engineers sit together with the management and define the service level indicators and service level objectives, and tell the management team that, hey, you folks can then put up you know um, certain set of agreements based on those. So that's what it all means. So just to recap, what we studied in this lecture, or what we studied in this video, is we studied three parts: your service level indicators that define what kind of measurements you would do in a service, like latency, download speed, error rate. You studied what are the objectives. When you put numbers on them, when you put constraints on them, they become service level objectives. And when you assign a certain monetary value, or you set up a certain set of agreements that if you don't meet these SLOs, this is what would happen. That's where you call your service level agreements. One last part that I want to include here at the top is error budgets. So what you would have in this case is also called as error budgets. So these are the things that you define in your team. Error budgets is something where, say, you do not meet your error rate is, say, let's say for an error budget, let's say you have 10% error rate, right, for a particular indicator. Now, say that error rate starts creeping up. Say it's 30%, then it goes to 40%, it goes to 50%. You have a certain called budget that says, hey, it's okay if you don't meet this, but the moment there are more than 100 data points in that particular, you know, period of time that have crossed that error rate, that's called of your budget. Once you blow the budget, that's when you start to hear the alarms, or you start to miss the objectives. A certain set or a certain limit can be allowed when you're dealing with this, but when you cross that particular value, when you cross that particular value for a certain set of data points, that's when you blow up the error budget. So that's the last part I wanted to add. So that's all that we studied in this video, and I hope you understood it. And it's a really basic but really important concept from an SRE point of view. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in another video.